With that said, I am Travis Giffen. I'm the Assistant Director for Online Programs at the College of Education, and wanted to thank you all for attending our alumni panel today, regardless of whatever time zone that you're in. Appreciate your attendance this evening. And with that, I'm gonna let each of our panelists briefly introduce themselves, and then we will turn things over to a panel. I'll have some questions for each of the panelists. Once we work through those questions, we'll open things up for Q&A from the audience. Depending on how long that goes, we'll do breakouts for some small group networking with participants here and everybody here in attendance this evening, and come back from the breakouts from that, do a brief debrief, and then wrap things up for this evening. So with that said, Spencer, could you go first?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name's Spencer Long. I'm a recent graduate of the EDD program in Learning Design and Leadership, and I currently work at Sigma Alpha Epsilon Fraternity as their Senior Director of Member Education and Development. Is there anything I missed, Travis?
No, I think that'll be good for now.
Great.
Mark, could you go next?
Sure thing, Travis, and thanks for having me. My name is Mark Brandon, graduated last year, EDD program focused on global studies in education, and I'm currently the head of a K-12 international school located in the country of Peru.
Thank you, Mark. And Kelly, you're next on my screen, so could you go next?
All right, thanks a lot, Travis. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Jessup. I graduated last year with a master's in education from the Education Policy Organization and Leadership group with a concentration in learning design and leadership. It's quite a long, quite a long moniker there, and actually all of that is on the diploma. But yeah, so I'm just really excited to be here tonight.
Thank you, Kelly. And Austin, could you go next?
Yeah, Kelly, I'm 100% with you. People would ask what the major is, and trying to spit out education, policy, and organizational leadership with a concentration in learning design and leadership was always a lot to explain, and I usually mess that up. I graduated also with my EDD, defended in November. I'm a high school teacher and coach, so I taught and took the program at the same time, and look forward to helping you guys out the best I can.
Thank you. Thank you all for that. And with that, kind of just start with our first question of the evening. We'll just stay in the same order that we just went there. Give each of you an opportunity to answer the questions as they go. So first question I have is, what were you doing before your degree program at UIUC? And then maybe in addition to that, what was your experience in taking online courses before?
Yeah, so when I started the EDD program, I was working at the University of Illinois, Chicago, so part of the University of Illinois system. And I was serving as their director of student leadership and civic engagement, meaning I was doing leadership curriculum delivery, service learning, getting students registered to vote and participating in voting. I actually was looking for a program that was mobile because I wasn't sure if I was going to be at the university. That was always my fear, as I would start somewhere and a perfect job would come along and I wouldn't be able to finish. And so having a program that was online and completely mobile was like really attractive to me. The program was only a year old at the time. And so I had done very little in online learning at the time. So it was a little scary, but it worked out well for me because I had a young 1-year-old son when I started out. And so being able to work kind of on your time, at your time, when you're able to, and having some synchronous things once a week worked well for me. So that's kind of how it worked out in my ability, and ultimately ended up getting a job where I moved from the university. And so if it wasn't being able to finish remotely, it would have been hard. Also, being in Chicago and taking a program that's in Urbana-Champaign was being online was a big perk too, not having to drive. And I know Mark is not an anomaly. A lot of students in the program were from a multitude of areas, which I found to be extremely beneficial in the program, to have people all around the world to think through learning differently. So I hope I didn't steal everyone else's answers, but that's where I'm at.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Should I
Spencer.
jump in, Travis?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, yeah. So I'm a career-long international educator. Been doing it for over 2 decades. Worked all over the world. Started my career as an elementary teacher on the island of Guam. Technically not non-U.S. U.S. territory, but it definitely felt different than being on the mainland. From there, worked in schools as elementary teacher, technology director, and later principal and head of school areas. I was in Thailand, Myanmar, United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, actually in Papua. Really interesting place there. It's up on the top of the highlands there to Miami. Complete jungle. We had 2 schools and would take a heavy lift helicopter down to the lowlands for another school. So really fascinating experiences I've had over the years. Now, being overseas for so long, I needed an online program. And so believe it or not, I first started with online education. I believe my first class I took was 1999 or 2000 through San Diego State. And I was only removed from learning what the internet was by like 3 or 4 years. I think the first time I accessed the internet was like 96. And that program was, pretty cool. I was in Bangkok, Thailand, and I was taking a class through San Diego State. At that time, it was the Jetsons TV. I mean, it was future for those of you who go back to those cartoons and things. It was outer space to me to be able to do that and have that privilege. Mostly it was static discussion boards, that kind of thing. I doubt we had anything other than that. From there, I then actually gained my entire master's online, and that was in education administration. That was in the mid 2000s. Again, mostly asynchronous discussion boards. Didn't really get to know other students, just a sign of the times. Technology wasn't quite there yet. I earned that part of the time I was in the United Arab Emirates, and part of the time I was in, where was I? Peru at one time, and also through Indonesia. So that program spanned some 3 different years in 3 different places. And so, and I'll talk more a little bit later about why I chose Illinois and all that. But yeah, I did have some experience, but nothing compared to what I had more recently through Illinois.
Yeah, so I work at Yale School of Management, which is Yale's MBA program. So I've been there for almost 10 years. And that's where I was working when I started the master's program at Illinois. I worked as a faculty support to one of the professors. So I helped with research, course administration. He wrote a couple books. I did a bunch of stuff for that. So I was already in that kind of environment. I would say in terms of online learning, I've had actually a pretty good amount of experience with online learning. I ended up finishing my bachelor's degree online. So I actually took about half of my undergraduate credits online. And that was really a kind of the jump in for me to online learning. And it was pretty intensive. I was working full time while I was taking those classes, trying to get that finished up. It was all asynchronous though. So that was something different to get used to, but it worked really well for me. Kind of the same way that Spencer mentioned, because I was working full time, I just didn't need the hassle of kind of like driving to a campus and, doing all that. So there was a lot of flexibility, which, really made a difference for me. And then, and so then I, because I felt really comfortable in that environment, I found the master's program I wanted and jumped right into that. And then actually COVID hit, of course, while I was still in the program. And so because I was, working for a professor at the time, I kind of got some experience when all of our classes moved online, being on the other side of that. So I've kind of been on both sides of it.
And I'll jump in here. I recently got my master's from the University of Missouri, so I was all online there. I teach in Northwestern Illinois, so I teach and coach. Like a lot of you guys who are probably interested in the program, your main responsibility is probably your main job somewhere, and the allure of an online program is the fact that you don't have to be there. So for me, I got my master's at Mizzou, and then went right into my doctorate at the University of Illinois. Comparing the 2 online programs, I would definitely say U of I is a really, really top-notch and elite program when it comes to their online education. Missouri was great. I loved it, but I would say U of I was that much better. So I was able to teach full-time, coach full-time, and also go to school full-time at U of I just because of their really asynchronous and synchronous learning. It was just a really good, flexible program in which I was able to earn a degree that was reputable, because I think for a lot of us, it's a gateway to somewhere else. For me, I always wanted to teach at the collegiate level, so I couldn't just get an online degree from anywhere. I needed it to look good on my resume or on my CV. And U of I was the best online program that I could find that would allow me to actually be in the discussion for, faculty positions at the collegiate level.
Thank you all for that. Thank you for sharing. So I think some of you have touched on this a little bit, but maybe if you could expand on it a bit more. So why did you choose the program specifically that you chose and graduated from? Start with Spencer again.
Yeah, so I think for me, being a student affairs practitioner, I really had two choices. I could do a higher ed student affairs doctorate program, or for me, I wanted to kind of pivot the other way. So instead of doing something more niche, I wanted to do something that maybe gave me the opportunity that I could do leadership development in higher ed, or I could do leadership development for a company, or I could do something for a nonprofit. And so for me, the program being as diverse as it is, learning skills related to the delivery of content, no matter what it is, was really appealing to me, and why I chose that program, the learning design and leadership program specifically, because it really is applicable in a multitude of areas.
Thanks, Spencer. Mark?
Yeah, for me, I don't know if I chose the program as much as I chose the university. I had been looking forward to starting a doctorate program for many years. I'm not sure why, and I certainly didn't know the work it was going to entail, or I probably wouldn't have pursued it, but it just was always on my mind that I wanted to go after a doctorate degree. And I've been looking for programs for years, and I would find some good schools with some programs, but then the programs were ones that I didn't find very interesting. I didn't want to spend the next 3 years of life looking at curriculum development. I didn't need a leadership program in my master's. So I was looking for something a little bit different, and it had to be online, and it had to be fully online. Some of the programs, I was like, wow, this is a good program. Oh, 3 weeks in the summer, okay, on campus. Like, well, that's not going to fit me, because I live in South America, and June is the winter for us. It's not the summer, and I can't spend 3 weeks on a campus, in the United States. And so, and plus, I never understood that. If it's an online program, what magic happened in those 3 weeks? Yeah, it's great, but you get to see everybody, but it wasn't going to fit my needs. I needed a fully online program, and that's just how it is. I live overseas. I don't have the opportunity to drive to a school or to visit one easily. So that was really important to me. When I found Illinois, I'm originally from Illinois. I grew up in Northbrook, outside of Chicago, and so I know about the university, the quality of it, the reputation of it. I think might have been Austin that had mentioned that. I believe it was. That absolutely is part of it. You don't want to spend 3 or 4 years of your life on a doctorate degree that the paper just doesn't hold up as well as it should be. It's not really fair to say that, but I think that's part of it. So eventually, the global studies program, it was fascinating to me. Global studies in education. It's a little bit outside of what I do normally in K through 12. It wasn't that straight up curriculum and helping learning with education really about, and the context of it throughout the world. And it really brought to me something that opened my eyes in education, which is it needs to be transformative in nature. And someone outside of the education field, K through 12, might be, well, of course, but when you're right in K through 12 and you're so bogged down with helping students and with reading issues and all of the social issues, you sometimes forget the big picture that education is here to transform the world. And so the program was fascinating for me, and it was completely different than anything that I had seen. And I think it was a great choice, and proud to have graduated through University of Illinois.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I think for me, definitely some similarities there. It was really important to me to have a reputable school with a reputable program. So, that was easy. I was actually searching for a while, though. I remember I had this Excel spreadsheet I created because I knew I wanted to be sort of somewhere with education and technology, and I wanted to keep working with adults. And so I was just looking at all kinds of different programs, and I found the, University of Illinois program, but what really hooked me in, because, obviously it's reputable and has a great history with, particularly with the School of Education, was the Master Track program in instructional design. And I knew that was the direction I wanted to go in. And the Master Track program actually made it a really easy decision because I don't know if everyone's familiar with it, but basically it's just sort of 2 courses in instructional design that are, designed by Illinois, but they're offered on the Coursera platform. And it was a really easy way to kind of test out if I really wanted to jump in and do a full master's program, because at a bare minimum, I could walk away with a sort of 2-course certificate and also decide if that was the field I really wanted to continue in. And I had a great experience and knew that I definitely wanted to do it. And the other thing that's great about Master Track is that if you complete it and then decide you want to continue on, you apply for admission and they actually convert those 2 courses into credits. So it was just a win-win all around, and it was a great entry to the program. And then, once I looked at the programs in a little more detail, for me, I knew it was learning design and leadership because that was exactly what I wanted to be doing. And not long after I graduated graduated from Illinois, where I work at Yale, the executive education department had an opening for the assistant director for digital learning, which was what I had just spent, the better part of the last 3 years studying. And so I was able to transition into a new role, and, the program prepared me really well for it. So I agree with everyone. For me, it was also a great choice, and I had a really good experience.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, I would agree that the learning design and leadership program was really beneficial during the COVID pandemic as we switched to remote learning. The program is all about digital learning and how to be innovative within that. So I think anybody in that program probably had an upper hand within being able to adapt and respond to what was going on. As a teacher, as a coach, learning design made sense. Leadership is thrown in there, and just being honest, I think it's just thrown in there. I don't know explicitly there's a ton on leadership. I love leadership. I studied positive leadership at Missouri. I think it sounds good, but I don't know that a lot of the courses explicitly discussed leadership in any way, shape, or form, other than it being implied within being creative and being kind of cutting edge within the innovative stuff that we're doing. I think inherently that is leadership, but it's not discussed to a great extent. So if you took leadership in your master's courses, I don't think you'd be hit over the head with leadership in the EDD program that I was a part of within the LDL concentration. But I loved it. I think it was a really beneficial program just for my development as an educator. And if you're big into educational technology and where the world's going digitally, I think it's extremely beneficial to your cause. We had a lot of diverse people in there. There was a lot of teachers, but there was also a lot of other people that came from many different professions. I would say Dr. Cope and Dr. Kalanzis kind of have this very, very cool mission and vision that they're on, that they bring everybody kind of along for the ride within. So I would say if you're excited about being part of something that is new, the LDL program would be a part of that. With anything new, there's going to be bumps in the road. And we were part of the guinea pigs, I think, kind of figuring some of that stuff out. But I had no problem with that because it was such a cool vision that they had established, that you were kind of part of something unique and special that they were designing in the moment. So I think the LDL concentration was the perfect choice just for me personally.
Thanks, Austin, and thanks everybody. So also a couple of you have touched on this as well. But how did you balance your coursework with your other personal responsibilities in your job and things like that?
It's tough. You got to get creative. I'll be honest. Either at night and the weekends, up early, just finding a time really that works for you. Again, I mentioned earlier, I had a 1-year-old son, and I will say when I started, and a 4-year-old son when I finished, or almost 4. And I will tell you, it was a lot easier when he was 1, going to bed at 6 o'clock at night, than 8 or even 8 or 9 when he is 4, just because you get extra time. But you just got to get creative and make it work. For me, I'm a morning person, so, and thank goodness for my wife, I was actually going into the office at like 5 in the morning and using 3 hours of time before work. And then just kind of starting the workday after. And then that way, when I got home after work, it could be all time with my son, and then just kind of start over. But everyone's got to figure out kind of what works for them.
Thanks, Spencer.
Yeah, my internet's going in and out, so let's just hope for the best here. But I agree with Spencer. It's the most important thing is what works for you. I'm very envious of people who can say, well, I carve out, 6 to 7 o'clock every night, or 6 to 8 o'clock. I have hours that I do, and I do my work then. That's just not who I am. And Cubs are playing the Cardinals that night, I'm going to probably watch that instead of doing my work. It's just, I'm going to find times for that fit me. And I think it's a little bit like for students that want to jump into this, someone who starts to diet or exercise, if they do everything completely opposite of their life, they're going to fail. You can't turn 180 like that. You have to fit things into your life. And so I kind of know who I am. Spontaneous. I can work 10 hours straight, and then I can go 3 days without working. And so like, I kind of just knew who I was. And so the most important thing was then to understand that weekends, fair game, evenings, fair game, vacations, fair game. For 3-4 years, I never thought that I would have, a whole weekend just to do nothing. I knew that I always had to find that spontaneous time to do the work. And I made that time for it. So that's what worked for me. That's not going to work for most people. If you are this organized person, great, you should definitely go for that. Something really was to try to make the work as exciting and fun and engaging for myself, and that kept the balance. So although the balance, I'm a husband, father, run a school, and try to take this on. So the balance is going to be like that no matter what you do. So I tried to make things more fun. University of Illinois has professors that are brilliant, creative, and I think they applaud out of the box thinking. And so that's kind of what I did. One of the first papers I wrote, I think, was on the effects of globalization on Peruvian cuisine. Live in Peru, the food's awesome. Like, wow, do the research on Peruvian food. I had a great time with it. And so it didn't feel as much like work. Another class, it was a philosophy and art class, and it was like an argument between Aristotle and Plato. And I had them argue about an obscure 1992, it was like a Belgian mockumentary about a serial killer. Like, this guy followed him around, and the whole argument was, is art still art if it's immoral? And so, and I'm a movie buff. And so to be able to bring that in, that's to me where the balance came from. It wasn't from, oh, I only have 2 hours of work today. It was, this work is fun, I'm enjoying it, and I'm going to keep going. And that's what kept me going. Once you get to dissertation, throw all that out, and you just power through it and make it. But up to that point, make those other classes meaningful in whatever way is best for you. And to me, that's the best way to bring balance, at least for me.
Thanks, Mark, for sharing your perspective.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what everybody's been saying. So I won't kind of repeat all that, but I will say for me, I definitely was somebody who needed a little more structure. So for me, it was helpful to have planned times, but also have some flexibility, right? Like if it's I would do a lot of my work on the weekends, but I'm also a morning person. So I try to restrict it to, okay, like it's Saturday morning and then the rest of my day is free, or it's Sunday morning. I'll be honest, some weekends it was both. Some weekends it was all day, both days. But that's sometimes that's just how that goes. But it is important though to, I think, be kind to yourself and remember that you're not superhuman. Most people in these programs are, they're working, they've got kids, they're married, they've got whatever, they're caring for a parent. I mean, everybody's got a lot of stuff going on, and the professors really understand that. But I think, at least for me, a realization I had that helped me keep the balance was just realizing that something has to give. You have to make room in your life for this, which means probably something else is going to get less attention. And so you just have to figure out what that is and, what you're okay with, because you're probably not going to be able to keep everything at exactly the level that you wanted to. But to Mark's point, this is something that you want to do, right? And it is fun. I mean, the classes are really interesting. And, if you can find topics that you really want to dig into within the framework of what you're studying, that does make it more relevant to you. And so I found the work very enjoyable as well. So yeah, I think just, realizing that this is something that you want to do and just reminding yourself when you need to, why you're doing it. And, it does also help to have the people in your life support you, especially if it's, somebody you're living with in your house, whether it's a spouse or kids or roommates or friends, whatever. It's good if they're on board, because what you're doing is going to affect them and how they spend their time as well. So I think that also helps with balance.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, I think to Mark's point, I think Illinois allows you a lot of flexibility within classes to do your assignments on things that matter to you, that are important to either your career or just your passion. So I think it makes the work more meaningful and less, schoolish, if you will. And also, like Kelly said, being kind to yourself. You aren't going to be superhuman within this. And I think understanding that and having that mentality that sometimes you just got to take care of yourself is really, really important, because it's easy to burn yourself out. And, trying to do everything and be everything to everyone is really, really difficult. And it's almost it's a perfectionistic standard you're just not going to hit. And I tried that for a while, and you definitely kind of suffer within your mentality and well-being as a result of that. So I think Kelly stated it, you got to know why you're doing it. For me, for 4 years, it was always the fuel of I wanted to teach at the collegiate level. So you got to find that why, or that fuel. I always knew why I was doing it. So that helped me kind of suck it up at 11 p.m. at night, where I'm still at school working at my desk, and so many other better things to be doing, but that's the fuel that kind of keeps you moving forward. And then just trying to prioritize your responsibilities. For me, I needed to get, I'm a high school teacher and coach. I needed to get that stuff done first. When I picked my graduate work first, everything else kind of crumbled. So you need to take care of your family and just your main job, because I think most of us had, primary jobs outside of graduate school. I think you have to make sure you're taking care of that first, as opposed to graduate work first and then your job, because I think things just kind of fracture if you take that, perspective within prioritizing. But a lot of it's just, the self-discipline to get it done. And that takes work, just kind of figuring out who you are within the process and finding the willpower to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. And the reward is always the freedom to go to Cubs games or have more family time, and being efficient just within, the time that you have is definitely critical to making sure you're still living life, as opposed to just, losing 4 years of your life through graduate school.
Thanks, Dustin. Yeah, it's important to, find ways in time to, reward yourself and not, entirely burn yourself out on your program or other responsibilities. With that, so I have one last question for the panelists before we open things up for Q&A. Just briefly share what you're doing now since you've got your degree, or where you're headed, kind of that next step for you, or what that's been.
Yeah, so right in the middle of the dissertation and the pandemic, I decided it'd be a good idea to get a new job, and don't know why anybody would do that, but I did. So I actually switched out of higher ed, and I work for a national fraternity now, doing learning design and leadership. Surprisingly, I mean, writing curriculum and helping think through things a little differently. I don't know what my next step is, but I knew for me, I knew the things I didn't want to do. So, and I didn't want to be the reason I couldn't do something I wanted to do, being because I didn't have the credential. And so we'll see where the road goes. But that's what I'm doing right now, and trying to help in other ways with other organizations as I'm able.
Thanks, Spencer.
Yeah, I actually almost also switched jobs and moved countries in the middle, Spencer, but I thought the best of it and didn't do that. So I actually remained in the same position that I had in Peru when I started this program. In the future, I'm actually working on a project combining two of my passions. And it really breaks my heart, to be honest with you, the negative press that I've heard online education has gotten the last few years through the K through 12 sector, because I think it's a remarkable way to learn within its own framework. Obviously, there needs to be more than just being at home on a computer, but online education and also the study of global issues are two of my passions. So I'm creating an online middle school called globalissues.org. You could jot the website down. It's not up. Sometimes it's up. It's being worked on. And the school is basically inspired by UNESCO's 2022 report called A Social Contract for Education. And really what it's doing is bringing the type of education that I received in Illinois in global issues and bringing it to middle school students, students who are interested in focusing on global issues, climate change, refugees, poverty, gender discrimination, et cetera. The whole school is going to be based on those issues. And so it's in the early stages. LLC is up, website is under construction, and after that will be digital marketing and trying to eventually attract students. A year or so out probably, but this is all 100% inspired by my experience at University of Illinois.
A lot of things to keep track of, Mark.
Yeah, so I also changed jobs during the pandemic. It wasn't terribly drastic because, as I mentioned, I stayed at the the same school that I was already at, but it's a completely different job, and it was just really. I'm still a little bit in shock because I finished my program around this time last year, officially graduated in May, and then a couple months after that, this job opened up in executive education, and it's digital learning with adults. I mean, it was exactly what I wanted to do. So yeah, so I've been there, I guess, seven months or so now, and I use what I learned at Illinois all the time, which is just really satisfying because I think, sometimes, particularly with like an undergraduate experience, because you have to take so many classes that are like required, but it's not stuff that you'll ever use. And, like I'm not doing calculus and I'm not doing, you know what I mean? So that's, I think, what's nice about like master's programs and doctorates is that it's really focused on, what you really want to be doing. And I'm finding that to be completely true. I mean, I use stuff that I learned in my classes all the time.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, as I said earlier, my whole point of getting into the EDD program was to hopefully teach at the collegiate level. So after I defended my dissertation in November, I figured out pretty quickly that I needed to get more publications. Just as a faculty professor, a lot of what they look at isn't only a doctorate degree, but being published. And just as a side note, U of I is starting a journal of learning design and leadership based on student alumni. So it's something that for a lot of you guys getting into the program in the College of Ed, I would definitely say use some of your work and submit it to the journal, and you can have publications on your resume or CV. And that's something that those of us who just were getting started when the program was young didn't have that opportunity. So this journal is definitely one that I would have taken advantage of. You could submit assignments really that you do for various classes into the journal and in theory get published. So it's just getting started. I'm an editor on that, and that's a huge opportunity for those of you who are interested in being published for either a faculty position or something like that. And I only say that because I've tried to be published over the last 3 or 4 months, and I've gotten in at several conferences and done presentations. So I've started to build my resume up, and I was recently offered a job at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. So I'll be moving from the high school realm to the collegiate realm next August, and definitely the U of I degree was big within that. So yeah, I achieved my goal, and that was huge. That's why I wanted to earn my EDD. And those of you interested in going to teach as a faculty member, it's definitely possible. So that's hopefully living proof to some of you guys getting in.
Thanks for sharing that additional information about the LBD journal. Also, and congratulations to everybody on the changes they've recently had. With that, I'm gonna open things up for questions from the audience. You can either, it's a small enough group, just nobody talk over themselves. You can unmute yourself and ask your question, or you can type your question in the chat, and I'm happy to ask it to the panelists.
So I'm going to break the ice here and say I didn't clearly read for comprehension today. I had a lot going on. I'm already in the program and I just saw that it was an alumni networking activity. And so wanted to hear from alumni. Appreciate all that you all have shared. But yeah, I didn't read for comprehension today. That's probably not a good example for a doctoral program student, but I've been on Zoom all day today. But I'll agree with with everything that everyone else said about the program. It's great. It's awesome. Yeah.
And your comprehension probably wasn't too far off. Our current students, are welcome to come to these also to make connections and everything like that. So don't be too hard on yourself.
Hi. Oh, oops, sorry. Hi, my name is Ariana and I am applying to the program. I have a bachelor's in anthropology and theater and from Bowdoin College, and I'm currently an admissions counselor at Bowdoin as well. And so firstly, I just want to thank you all for the advice, because thinking about this, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna do this job and potentially pursue more of my educational goals. But yes, I had a question, and this could be answered by anyone, but I'm thinking about the global education program and master's track, and thinking about policy was a word that's highlighted throughout the course descriptions. And so I was just wondering, are some of the classes, for those of you who have taken cross-listed classes, are they grounded in policy more so? Because also part of my process was looking at the DE program and then looking at global education and trying to parse out the specific differences and what I actually am desiring. And so if anyone could speak to that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I may have taken more of the classes of us for global studies and education. For me, the policy part of it, I mean, we were reading wide policy, UN documents, UNESCO, etc. We were looking at policies in all of the world. So it never to me felt like I was bogging down on what are policies for in-state or for nation. It was reading these amazing documents that I probably should have been reading just as an educator. And so, when I think, if you have a chance, and maybe you do it already, go on the sites and see what's going out there from the UN, from UNESCO, et cetera. What kind of policy documents are they putting out on, for example, education and refugees? Documents like that are coming out. Education in COVID. The policies all over the world. Some are working, some are not. Here in Peru, we had no one in school for 2 years, and so a few of us, like the ones at my school, were privileged to learn online, but most of the country, it was devastating. And so how do those policies affect these children for the rest of their lives? So if those kind of policies interest you, definitely almost every class has something along those lines. You'll be reading some nonfiction work, you'll be reading some fiction work even, and you'll be reading straight up policy and doing analysis on it. It's not easy. I don't think I was the best at at having analysis on those kind of documents, but I certainly learned a lot from it. So I'm not sure that kind of answers your question or not, but that was my experience with policy.
I think too, you can really drive what courses you take too. So I was in learning design, and I took one on globalization of higher education, another one on politics of education. And so it's really, I mean, some of it's looking at current policy, but also is looking at historical policy and how it impacted or what was the result of said implementation of the policy, and good, bad, and different. So it's really, I think it's really what you make of it. Like we said, you could go into the global studies and probably write all of your work on diversity and inclusion if you wanted to. I mean, it's really up to you how you focus a lot of the work that you're doing or the application of what you're learning. at least in my experience. I don't want to speak for everybody, but really even in the learning design and leadership course, I wrote on leadership development stuff because that's what I was doing. And a lot of people were writing on medicine or law or whatever they were kind of in what their interests were, music, depending on what they were teaching or doing at the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Melania, I hope I got your name right. I see your hands raised.
No worries, Juliana. This question is for Austin. Austin, could you talk a little bit more about your program at Mizzou and the differences between that program and Illinois, please?
Yeah, so I got my master's at University of Missouri Columbia. That one had a very similar name to it. It had something along the lines of education policy and organizational leadership. They're almost very, very similar within the titles. The concentration at Missouri was positive leadership and positive coaching. So it had more of a sports flair to it, which was good for me because I was big into sport and performance psychology. It's one of my passions. As Spencer talked about, a lot of people, fine tune their work towards what they're passionate about, whether medicine or law. For me, a lot of my work was leadership and sport. I would say Illinois does a much better job at the community ideal. I think Kelly talked about having a support system. I think that was a huge difference at U of I, was the community that was built within the program. At Missouri, I don't know that I really knew anybody. I don't know that that was what they even strive for. And it was fine. I loved it. It was life-changing. It was great. But I think at Illinois, the idea that you can kind of have a cohort and get to know everybody that's in your program or close to your program, I probably didn't do a good enough job at, making friends and reaching out to other people. But the support system that I did have was really, really big in times of struggle, because you're going to go through those times, and having other people kind of say, all right, yeah, I see, I know what you're going through. Like, your family's great, but at the same time, your family, like at U of I, was also big because they were going through the same problems and the same struggles. And it really helped to know that you weren't alone in the journey, or that you weren't cut out for it. It was nice to hear other people with, higher credentials than me say, oh yeah, I'm struggling too. And the same thing, it is really bothering me. So I think U of I, the community feel was a game changer just within the supporting network that you're able to develop. And I think we really enhanced that and amplify that here more so than what Missouri did. I hope that kind of answers your question.
Good, thanks.
And Juliana, if you don't mind, I'd like to add to that, just to echo, I don't have the Missouri experience, and I'm sure it's a fine school too, but the community, it just was incredible. We had one professor, it was Dr. Witt, and she would open up each class with a recording of her, somewhere in the university, and talk about, like, this is the quad, this means this, or this is an agriculture section. And you're like, wow, like I feel, it's embarrassing to almost say that I haven't ever stepped on campus, and for sure I would have if it wasn't for the pandemic. I wanted to be there for the ceremony. I couldn't do that. I wanted to be there to defend my thesis, my dissertation. I couldn't do that. Had to be online. But I feel part of Illinois in ways that, in many ways, more than I do of my undergraduate, which was many years before that, of course. But what a great community. You meet other students, you work in group projects, you find out who's good to work with and who isn't. You develop longer relationships. I still communicate with them, with professors, I don't have that, like, I haven't taken an online program that as recently as other people have, but man, you are part of the university. That's how I felt.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that as well. I totally agree. I had a very similar experience. The classes are fairly small. I mean, these aren't giant, at least in the LDL. I was in the master's program, and I suspect the PhD program is probably, or EDD program is probably even a little bit smaller. So you do, yeah, like over the course of a few years, you definitely get to know the people that you're taking classes with. A lot of us take the same classes. And yeah, I agree. I think the university does a good job at making you just feel part of everything. It's not like because you're taking classes online, you're sort of in this separate category, like you get all the student emails and all, you have access to sort of all those resources, and you're really treated just like any other student, which I think is a good experience for someone who isn't actually learning on campus.
Thanks for sharing all those experiences. We had one other kind of question. I'm going to try and group a couple of them together, especially for the LDL program. Could any of you who were in that talk about some, what you were most excited about in the program? What was maybe some of the courses, how were they designed? Maybe what was like an activity or assignment that you enjoyed the most?
There's like so much, right? There's like so many things like, we could probably all answer, but I love how the program's designed. I mean, if I had to pick one particular course that I was really excited about and ended up, being something that really changed how I think about the topic, is I took a course on assessment. And for me, that was really mind-opening, just learning about this shift from more of a like summative model to a formative model. And, I think especially when you work with adult learners like I do, low stakes kind of assessment along the way, I think works a lot better for a lot of us. So I think that was a great course. But yeah, I mean, in LDL, Dr. Copen-Calantis, their sort of overarching, I think, philosophy really is reflected in all of the courses that they teach. So you really get to know their sort of new learning approach really, really well. And it does sort of trickle down into all their classes. But yeah, I know it's a little bit nerdy, but I really liked the assessment class.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I'll jump in. The LDL courses were awesome with Copen-Calantis. I think the new learning theory and CG Scholar, they're pretty great within opening themselves up to what they're doing. And you definitely feel part of, again, their mission, and they're really good people, very laid back. So it's almost reassuring, just their laid back nature, because sometimes you're still, in school, you're so stressed out over deadlines and whatnot. And not that they don't exist, but I think they're very laid back and understanding of your own personal development and what you're going through. CG Scholar was great. It was a unique kind of online platform that had different analytics that they were testing out. So that was kind of neat to be a part of that, just a different form of assessment within using like artificial intelligence and metrics. So that was kind of fun to be a part of that, to be assessed in that way. But yeah, I would say anything with those guys. And I think I took a theory course with Dr. Burbulus, and theory was really hard for me to understand, especially because it's a main component of your dissertation. And that was a great course to better understand how theory plays a part in forming an argument. And that's really important if you're going to do a dissertation. It's going to be, chapter 3 along with your methods. So you kind of have to understand theory to really have a firm grasp of how to write a dissertation.
Thanks for answering those questions. Given the size of the group and the time that we have left, I won't break things into breakout rooms so anybody can get lost. To keep everybody here is the size of the group that we have. But if you have questions like professionally or related to other items that the panelists here this evening or anybody else, feel free to ask those also in the time that we have left.
Yeah, I had a question for Austin. And so you mentioned your study and your dissertation on sport. And so I would love to hear more. I am really interested in the ways in which, like, for BIPOC students and like the inner child of BIPOC adults, like their own sovereignty and their own like personal autonomy can be asserted through like the theater of sport. So like not necessarily like the sport itself, like it's still the theater person in me, the theater of sport and the culture of sport. And so I'd love to like know more about your positive leadership aspect of sport.
Yeah, again, I think whatever you guys are passionate about, you definitely have the freedom to go become an expert at that as much as you see fit within a lot of these courses, which is really great. So for me, it was sport and performance psychology. I teach a high school sports psychology course, and that turned into sport and performance psychology. So you mentioned theater, that'd be performance psychology to a T. And it's all about just developing a mentality that allows you to function optimally or perform at your best, the best version of who you are, to be able to really just reach the depths of your potential. And that was really neat to explore that within a dissertation, just what mental components facilitate high performance within each of us. And it doesn't have to be football or soccer or basketball. It can definitely be musicals and plays and theater. And it was just a phenomenal project. And it needs to be, if you're writing a dissertation, it definitely needs to be something you're passionate about. I was glad I picked that topic because I never really got bored of it. I mean, I think all of us could speak to the fact that we probably still somewhat got bored of 4 years of research, but if you're really passionate about it, at least makes that process a lot easier to handle within the grand scheme of things. Does that answer your question all right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi, my question's for Mark. I am a first-year EDD student in global studies, and I was curious if you had any professors or courses you would recommend definitely taking along the way.
Yeah, so I just can't think of if you write my name down, I can definitely send you the exact name of courses. I can give you some professors, and they're all great professors. But the first course I ever had, it was globalization and was it higher ed? I can't remember. Dr. McCarthy. He's Cameron McCarthy. He's brilliant person, and you just listen to him, and it's just amazing. What else? Aesthetics. The one I talked about, I wrote that crazy paper on the movie. That was our aesthetics, art and aesthetics, I think, or philosophy, something like that. Dr. Dillon, and she also did a class that involved human rights and education. Dillon, she was fantastic. Dr. Witt, anything she does, she's just so personable, and she's also had some good ties with international education. And she runs, I believe she runs, I could be wrong, runs the program of students going overseas, the program of study abroad program for education. I believe that's what she runs. She's also really interesting if you're interested in international education. They're all great classes though. Each of them has some, but those that really stood out for me. I think it became, I wouldn't say less interesting, but once you hit the methodology and all of the courses that are tied to your dissertation, then it's just kind of, you're not writing about Peruvian cuisine anymore. Then you're really focusing on whatever your subject is. And but yeah, there's some great classes there. Feel free to send me an email and I can give you the exact name of the courses. But yeah, Dr. Wick, Dr. McCarthy, Dr. Dillon, Dr. Davila was my advisor. Just if you have a chance, I think she's on sabbatical. You have a chance to work with her. Just fantastic support. There's another, the one on youth education. That was also, I'm just not getting the names right, but there was one on youth education. We looked a lot about, the uprisings in Islamic, was it the spring, or something like that, and how young people were involved in that. And so, yeah, pick a class and they're great, but please send me an email. I can give you exact names of the courses. It's been,
Thank you very
my
much.
memory's not as good. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I listed my email in the chat, tgiffin@illinois.edu. You can go ahead and send me an email and let me know which panelists that you want to connect to, and I can do all the connecting so you don't have to keep track of everybody else's emails or things like that. But with that, I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight, both prospective students and current students. And I want to thank our panelists for their time this evening and for joining us. Really appreciate everybody making the time to come together and be a part of the online community here at Illinois. With that, I hope that you have a great rest of the day. There will be a survey for the email that'll go out tomorrow morning. We also have a survey that we are doing for career services. So I just put that chat in there if you haven't done it already, to give us some feedback on career services and things like that you might be needing. If you're looking for applying for the EDD or the EDM programs, there's a deadline for April 15th for summer term A, and then May 15th for summer term B. We have an info session for curriculum and instruction tomorrow, if you're interested in that. And I'll post the link to all of our other upcoming events here if you want to check those out. But yeah, just want to tell everyone thanks again for coming tonight and have a great day.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Thank you. Good luck, guys.
Everybody. Have a good evening.